Welcome to Whisperwood Stories. Today, we read 3 stories from r/LetsNotMeet, a subreddit all about encounters with people that you'd rather not meet again. Let's begin. Our first story is from Turbovoid. One afternoon, I walked to my local corner store for some smokes, about a 7-minute walk if you're really taking your time. As I was exiting the store, a woman approached me and politely asked for a cigarette. She was gorgeous, super short hair, and looked a lot like the woman who played Claire Underwood from House of Cards. Super lean, great shape, well-kempt. Couldn't be older than her early 40s. She had regular clothes, basically a white tank top and jeans and regular shoes. People who are homeless don't always look dirty, but my immediate impression based off of her mannerisms was that she was just taking a break from a walk or something. It was really hot outside. I live in Los Angeles County. So I obliged, and after she handed my lighter back to me, her smile suddenly disappeared, and she got really strange. It's like she flipped a switch, and the polite, smiling woman disappeared. I felt that her eyes got dark, like she dissociated. She took a drag and looked me in the face. She went on about something if I knew what was going on. I had no idea what she meant, so I shook my head. She had a really mean smirk, and then talked about how dumb I was. She threw around a lot of slurs, and then accused me of being someone named Trejo. I was completely shocked by this, because it was nonsensical. I thought it was a joke, but I could tell that it just couldn't have been. I feel as if she would have attacked me even if I replied, so I didn't respond at all. She seemed to lose perception of me while she started monologuing. It was getting more aggressive, so I managed to slowly walk away while she started raising her voice to say really horrible things to no one. Most of it was racist, and I knew she wasn't directly talking to me, but her eyes would dart back to me. I can't really explain it well. I remember getting the goosebumps and immediately feeling like running. Suddenly, my adrenaline was at max. I kept my cool, though, and walked along the sidewalk of a busier road so there would be witnesses if I happened to be attacked or something. Thankfully, she didn't follow. This wasn't the only time I met her, however. It felt like she was either waiting around for me or something because I ran into her multiple times over the entire year of 2019. 2 of these encounters being at the same corner store again. The second time was at a McDonald's on the other corner. I was baked and enjoying the food as everyone reacted to a woman crying loudly from a booth that was a few tables behind me. I felt dread. I don't know how I knew it was her, but I just knew. I couldn't bring myself to look. A manager approached her and asked if everything was okay. The woman replied with screaming and just kind of went off. The manager threatened to call the cops, so the woman got her stuff together and I just tried to keep my eyes down as she passed. Right before leaving, with her hand literally pushing on the door, she looked directly at me with a glare. She commanded me to look at her. She radiated wrath. My mother didn't raise a coward, but I'm not fearless. For the first time in a very long time, I was actually terrified to death of another person. I looked up and she asked my name. She responded by telling me I was full of it. She accused me once more of being Trejo, Danny Trejo. I tried to assure her that I was not, in fact, Danny Trejo, and apologized for being unable to help her find him. She said that next time I see him, that I should tell him to go screw himself. Then she flipped me the bird and left. The employees checked on me, but I stayed in that McDonald's for an extra hour just to be safe. I had my roommate pick me up and drive me home since I walked there. It was less than 10 minutes of a walk, in broad daylight, but I just couldn't find the strength to do it, since I felt so weak and shaky anyway. I hadn't been this afraid of another person in over 10 years. Being so afraid of someone that was potentially my neighbor, someone who might be following me. I saw her in passing at least once a week that year, until I got too scared to leave my home. We were complete strangers, and I didn't do anything except bum her a cigarette. The final time I ran into her was at a corner store again, month 5 or 6 of running into her. She was wearing a really nice pair of silk or satin pajamas, clean, white fuzzy slippers, and had a cigarette in her hand. She saw me walking down the sidewalk, and I didn't have a choice but to look down and pass her. I ended up looking and gave her a kind of weak smile. She still looked so evil, and I saw that she watched as I rounded the corner. I bolted then. Sprinting home took less than a few minutes, but it felt like forever. I couldn't bring myself to go to the corner store for months after that, especially by myself, despite having lived in the area for 3 years and befriending the clerks there. My neighborhood isn't even a high-crime area, and I've never felt unsafe until that happened. Just a note from one afflicted about another. This story is not meant to find any actual humor out of those with illnesses or trauma or addiction. As absurd as it happened, this woman had an affliction that somehow convinced her that I'm an actual enemy, in a way that made me feel legitimately threatened. I haven't seen her in over a year, thankfully, and I hope she found some kind of help. So, afflicted Claire Underwood lookalike, I'm sorry for whatever you've been going through, but I really hope we never meet, ever, again. Our second story is by Miki. This happened during the summer of 2015, and I had just graduated high school, still living in my hometown. I was out with some friends, and it was getting really late, around 1 a.m., so I decided to head home. I stopped by a drugstore that was close to my house that was 24/7 to pick up some aspirin and snacks. This drugstore that I went to was in the same parking lot as a supermarket. I parked my car close to the store, and it was empty there. There were no more than 2 other cars in this giant parking lot, and I was nowhere near them. So I head in and grab what I came for to get quickly, because I had this overwhelming feeling of dread the whole time. I felt like someone was watching me, but I couldn't see anyone else there besides me and the cashier. Then after I had gotten everything I intended to buy, I stalled checking out and just went aisle to aisle looking at random things because I thought whoever was out there would leave if I took too long. Really, the whole time I thought I was being paranoid because I wasn't used to going out late, but that wasn't the case. After 20 minutes of that, I paid and left the store. Once I got to the front door, I literally bolted to my car, pepper spray in hand, to lock myself inside. I turned my head to check the back seat, and right before I could breathe in a sigh of relief, someone tapped on my window. I looked around before I left the store near the entrance, and no one was around my car, so how did I not see that person there? This is where I really freaked out. I don't know if this person was Ted Bundy inspired or what, but this was odd. He was a very handsome blonde man with slightly longer hair and a cast on his arm. Now my first instinct was to drive off, but he was leaning on the front hood of my car, and I didn't want to hurt him, so I rolled down my window just an inch so he could speak. Maybe I'd be able to back up just a little bit and drive off without hitting him. But no, he stayed glued to my car. He then asked me if I could help him with directions and look up an address for him. I told him that I really needed to go, so maybe he could ask the drugstore manager for help. But no. He said he already went to the supermarket and they couldn't help. Now that place, the supermarket, closed at 8. There was no way this guy had just been lurking around for 5 hours waiting for some random girl's help. He then went on about feeling really tired and if I could just give him water or food since he had no money. I told him okay and began to reach to my passenger side to grab the chips I had just purchased and started rolling down the window. Like I expected, he moved closer to my window, but he was now off the car, so I hit the gas as he chased my car, and I heard a scraping sound on the side as I pulled away. I didn't drive directly home in case I was followed and drove down the highway for about an hour. I was so distraught over what happened. I finally got home and saw that the entire side of my car had been scraped from one door almost to the trunk. I'm really sure he used a knife or some kind of sharp object because it was a really rough scrape. I reported the incident, but they never found him or any similar incidents in my town. I feel that he was watching me the whole time from the windows in the store, because how else would he have known that I bought food and water? I also think he hid behind my car so I couldn't see him when I came outside. I feel like he was trying to get me before I got in my car, but I was in too fast. So, creep in the parking lot. Let's never meet, ever again. Our last story is from Sturrux. This happened way back in October of 2006. At that time, I was just a 19-year-old kid, always on the lookout for an adventure. One Friday night, after wrapping up my shift at McDonald's, I met up with some friends who suggested that we check out this haunted location called White's Bridge. My one buddy, Brandon, said that he had recently learned about it and began telling us the legends associated with the 100-year-old wood-covered bridge. Never one to turn down a spooky experience, we all piled into my green Ford Taurus and headed out on our journey. Brandon gave directions, guiding me off the main road, and within minutes, we were on dirt back roads, surrounded by woods and cornfields. Our only point of reference was the blinking cell tower off in the distance. We could tell we were getting further from the city as our cell phones began slowly losing service. As we rode deeper and deeper into what legitimately felt like the absolute middle of nowhere, Brandon repeated the legend associated with the bridge. Back in the early 1900s, a local farmer discovered that his beloved wife had been cheating on him, and in a fit of rage, he killed her and her lover after discovering them in the act. After committing the cold-blooded murder, the farmer left his home and wandered the dirt roads in a daze. He eventually came upon White's Bridge, where the realization of what he had done finally began to sink in. And deciding he would rather die than face the consequences of his actions, he hoisted a rope over one of the bridge's rafters and hung himself. As far as I can tell now, though, the story is complete fiction, but we totally believed it at the time. After a long and bumpy ride, Brandon instructed me to turn right to an off-road. I wouldn't have even have noticed it if he had not pointed it out. I took the turn, and there before us was White's Bridge itself. It looked like something straight out of a horror film, an old wood-covered bridge, aged by time, sitting alone above a river deep in the middle of nowhere. We parked the car on the side of the road and got out to explore. Immediately catching our eyes was a scarecrow lying abandoned on the entrance of the bridge. My friend Mike, who was known as somewhat of a risk-taker, and a stupid one at that, picked up the scarecrow and lit it on fire. The hay body burst up in a ball of flames, and Mike waved it around proudly next to the old, dry, wooden bridge. Realizing the risk, I told him to throw the thing in the river and put it out, which he thankfully did. After making sure there weren't any rogue embers that could ignite the bridge, Brandon suggested that we get back in the car and pull it onto the bridge. He explained that the legend was that if you parked your car in the middle of the bridge, put it in neutral, and killed the engine, the spirit of the dead farmer would push the vehicle forward to get it off the bridge. Naturally, we had to try this. We piled back in and did exactly what he said. We parked halfway across the rickety old bridge and killed the engine. We sat in the pitch black, saying nothing, waiting for something, anything, to happen. The only sounds were the creaking of the bridge, the river flowing beneath us, and footsteps. Suddenly, the back driver's side door opened and a woman abruptly entered the back seat, cramming in next to my two friends back there. She looked to be in her late 20s, early 30s perhaps, long, straight black hair, slim, and wearing a plaid shirt and blue jeans. It's been a while, but this is essentially how I remember the conversation going. "I saw your signal fire for me," she said. Wait, what?" I replied, totally freaked out and at a complete loss for words. "I'm so glad you came. My boyfriend's car broke down, just that way. I need a ride back." My brain was doing its best to compute the situation. "I'm sorry, but who are you?" I asked. "What are you doing here?" "I told you," she responded curtly. "My boyfriend's car broke down just over there. Can you please just give me a ride back so I don't have to walk all the way back?" She was pointing ahead towards a narrow road that forked off to the right on the other side of the bridge. My friend Mike, the scarecrow burner and ever the gentleman, added, "I mean, if you need a place to stay, you're more than welcome to come crash at my place. I've got plenty of drink and—" I interrupted him. "No, lady, listen. I'm sorry, but I don't know who you are, and you just got into my car. This is really weird. You could be an axe murderer for all I know, and I'm sorry, you have to get out." She glared at me in the rearview mirror, and if looks could kill, I would have been done for. "But you signaled for me," she responded in an irritated tone. "We weren't signaling for you. Get out." She let out an angry sigh and got out, walking back in the direction from which she came and disappearing into the night. I started the engine right up and looked at my friends. They all had looks of disbelief on their face. Without saying a word, I put the car into drive and slowly rolled forward and off the bridge. We needed to turn around and go back across the bridge to get back to where we had come from. The only way to do that was to pull onto the side road that the woman said her boyfriend's car had broken down on, and then reverse. As I pulled onto the side road, my headlights illuminated 3 posted signs that I hadn't been able to see from the bridge. "No trespassing," "Private property," and "Do not enter." Looking up the road, there was absolutely no sign of the woman. Wherever she went, it didn't appear that she just went that way. I didn't want to stick around though, so I backed up and crossed the bridge again, and from there began the journey home. We didn't have much to say on the ride back. I think we were all equally stunned, except for Mike, who asked if we knew anyone that would be awake at this hour he could score some weed from. I visited White's Bridge a couple of times after that, but nothing of note happened in my subsequent visits. Sadly, some delinquents burned down the old White's Bridge some years ago. It was rebuilt, but from what I hear, it just wasn't the same as the original. I don't have any plans to go check it out. To that strange lady who entered my car in the middle of nowhere at 2 a.m., let's not meet. Thank you for listening to Whisperwood Stories. If you enjoyed, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe down below. Do you have a story that you'd like me to read here? Consider sending it to whisperwoodsubmissions@gmail.com. Thank you again for listening, And don't forget to check out the original Reddit posts. Don't let the shadows get too close.